Here is a fact that is going to mess with your head a little. Almost every single fruit you have ever called a berry is not actually a berry. Strawberries are not berries. Raspberries are not berries. Blackberries are not berries either. But bananas are. So are tomatoes. So are avocados. Botanists have a very specific definition for what counts as a true berry, and most of the fruit aisle completely fails the test. So today we are going through 8 of the most popular berries in the world, breaking down where they come from, what makes them special, and which ones have been lying to your face this entire time. Let us start with the biggest fraud of them all. Number 1. Strawberries. Strawberries have been fooling people for centuries, and they are still getting away with it. To qualify as a true botanical berry, a fruit has to develop from a single flower with one ovary, and the seeds need to be embedded on the inside. A strawberry fails on both counts, which is why botanists classify it as something called an accessory fruit. Those little yellow specks dotting the outside of a strawberry are not seeds. Each one is actually its own tiny individual fruit, called an achene, and the real seed is tucked away inside each one. The big red juicy part that everyone loves is really just swollen stem tissue from the flower, so the part you eat is not the fruit at all. It is basically the flower's way of attracting animals to spread the actual fruits around. Ancient Romans grew wild strawberries in their gardens and believed the fruit could cure everything from depression to kidney stones. But those Roman strawberries were tiny, closer to the size of a large marble than anything you would find in a grocery store today. The large, sweet strawberry most people recognize was not developed until the 1700s in France, when a wild variety from the mountains of Chile was accidentally crossbred with one from the forests of Virginia. That happy accident created the ancestor of nearly every commercial strawberry grown on the planet right now. Number 2. Blueberries. After all that deception, here is one that actually earns its name. Blueberries are one of the rare common fruits that check every single box botanists look for in a true berry. They develop from a single flower with one ovary, and the seeds sit protected inside the flesh. No tricks, no technicalities. Blueberries are the real deal. They are native to North America, and indigenous peoples across the continent were eating them, drying them, and using them in cooking long before European colonizers arrived. Commercial blueberry farming did not really take off until the early 1900s, when a cranberry farmer named Elizabeth White teamed up with a USDA botanist named Frederick Coville to develop the first cultivated blueberry plants from wild bushes growing in the sandy pine barrens of New Jersey. Before their work, nobody believed blueberries could be farmed at all. White offered cash rewards to local Pine Barrens residents, who could find the biggest, sweetest wild bushes, then worked with Coville to crossbreed them into reliable crop plants. By the 1920s, they had created the first commercially viable blueberry varieties, and an industry was born from what everyone assumed was an untamable wild fruit. That dusty white film you sometimes notice on fresh blueberries is not pesticide residue or mold. It is called bloom, a thin layer of natural wax the plant produces to protect the fruit from moisture loss and sunlight. Farmers actually look for a strong bloom as a sign of freshness, because it gradually wears off the longer the berries sit around after harvest. If your blueberries look a little frosty, that is a good thing. Blueberries get their deep color from pigments called anthocyanins, the same compounds that give red cabbage and purple grapes their rich tones. The darker the blueberry, the higher the concentration of these pigments tends to be. Number 3. Raspberries and blackberries. These two get grouped together because they are basically botanical cousins sharing the same secret identity. Neither one is a true berry. Both are classified as aggregate fruits, which means they form when a single flower has multiple ovaries instead of just one. Each tiny bump on a raspberry or blackberry is called a druplet, and every single druplet developed from its own separate ovary on the same flower. So when you pop one raspberry into your mouth, you are technically eating dozens of miniature fruits that fused together as the flower developed. It is like a tiny fruit colony pretending to be one piece. The easiest way to tell raspberries and blackberries apart, beyond color, is what happens when you pick them. Pull a ripe raspberry off its stem, and it separates cleanly from the white core, called the receptacle, leaving a hollow center behind. That is why raspberries feel so delicate and collapse if you look at them wrong. Blackberries, on the other hand, keep that core attached when harvested. Bite into one, and you will notice a firm, pale piece running through the center. It is also why blackberries hold their shape better and feel more substantial. Wild blackberries have grown across Europe and North America for thousands of years, but raspberries were actually the first of the two to be cultivated. Ancient Greeks are believed to have grown them on Mount Ida in modern-day Turkey, which is where the raspberry's scientific name, Rubus idaeus, originally comes from. Number 4. Cranberries. Cranberries are a true berry, and they are also one of the only major commercial fruits native almost exclusively to North America. They grow on low-lying vines in sandy wetland areas called bogs, but there is a common misconception worth clearing up. Cranberries do not grow underwater. The bogs are only flooded at harvest time because ripe cranberries contain small air pockets inside that make them float to the surface. Flooding the fields simply makes it easier to gather them all at once. Those same air pockets are also the reason behind one of the oldest quality control tricks in the cranberry business, called the bounce test. A ripe, fresh cranberry has enough trapped air to physically bounce when dropped onto a hard surface. Soft or spoiled cranberries just land with a dull thud and sit there. For decades, farmers used angled bounce boards to literally separate the good berries from the bad before machines eventually took over the sorting process. Native American communities used cranberries for much more than eating. They mixed crushed cranberries with dried meat and animal fat to create pemmican, a preserved high-energy food perfect for travel and harsh winters. The juice doubled as a natural dye for fabrics and blankets, and cranberry poultices were applied directly to wounds because certain compounds in the fruit were believed to help fight infection. Today, the vast majority of cranberries harvested in the United States never end up in a grocery store as whole fruit. Most are processed into juice, dried sweetened cranberries, or sauce. The whole fresh cranberry market is actually a tiny fraction of total production, which is why most people have only ever tasted cranberries in their processed form rather than biting into one raw. And if you have tried one raw, you already know why. Fresh cranberries are intensely sour and astringent, nothing like the sweetened versions most people are used to. Number 5. Goji berries. Goji berries are a true berry, which might surprise you given how modern and exotic their marketing usually feels. They grow on a woody shrub that belongs to the nightshade family, making them a close botanical relative of tomatoes, bell peppers, and eggplants. These small red berries have been used in Chinese cooking and traditional medicine for well over 2,000 years. They were added to soups, steeped in teas, and blended into herbal tonics across East Asia long before anyone in the West had ever heard of them. The plant is native to parts of northwestern China, and dried goji berries have been a common ingredient in Chinese kitchens for centuries. But then the 2000s superfood boom happened. Health food marketers rebranded goji berries practically overnight, positioning them as a miracle antioxidant fruit alongside acai and pomegranate. Prices jumped dramatically. Small bags of dried goji berries that cost very little in Chinese grocery stores were suddenly being sold for 10 times more in Western health food shops with sleek packaging and bold health claims. Here is the reality. Goji berries do contain beneficial antioxidants and vitamins. Nobody disputes that. But nutritionists have repeatedly pointed out that many common, affordable fruits like blueberries, oranges, and even regular old grapes offer comparable benefits without the inflated price tag. Goji berries are a perfectly good fruit. They are just not the miracle their marketing budget wants you to believe. If you are finding this interesting, hit subscribe. I cover food deep dives like this every week. Now let us head into the Amazon rainforest for one of the most fragile fruits on the planet. Number 6. Acai berries. Acai is a true berry, but it grows in a place most people would never expect. Instead of sprouting from a bush or trailing along a vine, acai berries grow in dense clusters near the tops of tall, slender palm trees scattered throughout the Amazon rainforest, primarily in Brazil. What makes acai unusual is how quickly it falls apart after harvest. Fresh acai berries begin to degrade within roughly 24 hours of being picked, which is exactly why you will almost never find a fresh acai berry anywhere outside the Amazon basin. Nearly everything sold internationally, whether it is a frozen puree packet, a powdered supplement, or a bottled juice blend, has already been processed and preserved shortly after harvest, just to survive the journey out of the rainforest. Communities living along the Amazon River have eaten acai as a daily dietary staple for generations, but the way they eat it looks nothing like what most people picture. Traditionally, acai pulp is served in a thick, unsweetened form alongside grilled fish and toasted cassava flour. It is treated more like a savory side dish than a dessert. The brightly colored smoothie bowls topped with granola and honey that became a global trend starting in the 2000s are a completely modern Western invention. The deep purple, almost black color of ripe acai comes from the same anthocyanin pigments found in blueberries, just in significantly higher concentrations. Number 7. Elderberries. Elderberries are technically a true berry, and they are one of the few fruits on this list that come with an actual safety warning. Raw elderberries, along with the plant's leaves, bark, stems, and unripe green berries, contain cyanogenic glycosides. In plain terms, these are compounds that can cause nausea, vomiting, and serious stomach pain if the berries are eaten without being cooked first. Once elderberries are properly heated, though, those harmful compounds break down completely, which is why cooked elderberry has been safely used in jams, wines, syrups, and folk remedies across Europe for hundreds of years. In medieval England, elderberry wine was so common it was sometimes called the Englishman's grape, and European folklore treated the elderberry bush itself with an almost superstitious level of respect. Some rural traditions warned that cutting down an elder tree without first asking the tree's permission would bring terrible luck, because people believed a protective spirit called the Elder Mother lived inside. In recent years, elderberry syrup has become one of the most popular natural remedies during cold and flu season, showing up everywhere from pharmacy shelves to homemade recipes shared across social media. Research on its actual effectiveness is still mixed and ongoing, but the tradition of reaching for cooked elderberry at the first sign of a sniffle predates modern pharmacy by centuries. Beyond medicine, cooked elderberries have long been used to make rich, dark wine, pie fillings, and preserves across rural England and Central Europe. Number 8. Juniper berries. This last one is going to break your brain a little, because juniper berries are not berries. They are not even fruit. What everyone calls a juniper berry is actually a small, fleshy cone produced by a coniferous evergreen tree. It is in the same plant family as pine trees, cypress, and cedars. The reason they look so convincing is that the scales of the cone fuse together tightly during growth, creating a smooth, round shape that looks almost identical to a small berry. But crack one open, and the structure inside is completely different from any fruit. Unlike most entries on this list, juniper cones take an extraordinarily long time to mature. A single juniper berry can take 2 to 3 full years to ripen on the branch, slowly transitioning from green to a deep blue-purple as it develops. Juniper is best known as the signature flavor in gin. The word gin itself traces back to the French word genièvre, meaning juniper, and without these little cones, gin would taste like a completely different spirit. Dutch distillers in the 1600s were the first to flavor grain alcohol with juniper, creating a medicinal drink called Juniper that eventually evolved into the gin we know today. Beyond cocktails, juniper berries have been a cooking ingredient across Northern Europe for centuries. Their sharp, piney, slightly peppery flavor pairs particularly well with rich game meats like venison and wild boar, where the juniper cuts through the heaviness and adds a clean, aromatic bite. So there you have it, 8 berries, and only about half of them actually earned the title. Strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, and juniper berries are all imposters in one way or another. Blueberries, cranberries, goji berries, acai, and elderberries pass the test. It is a strange reminder that the way we name food in everyday conversation has almost nothing to do with how science actually classifies it. If this changed the way you will look at your next trip down the fruit aisle, there is a whole world of food myths just like this one, waiting to be picked apart. Click the video on screen to keep going, and I will see you in the next one.